There is a creature in the ocean right now that has found a way around death, not a longer life, not a slower aging process, a way around it entirely. And the strangest part is not what it does, it is what it undoes. Most of us have a rough mental model of how a jellyfish works. It is born, it floats, it stings things, it dies. That is the shape of it. A simple life, a simple end. But one species, Turritopsis dohrnii, a jellyfish about the size of a human fingernail, does something that biologists still struggle to fully explain. When it is old, or starving, or injured, it does not die. It goes back, not metaphorically, physically. It reverses its own development and becomes a juvenile again. Then it grows up a second time. Then it can do it again. There is no known upper limit to how many times this can happen. The word biologists use for this is transdifferentiation. What it means is that a fully mature, specialized cell, a muscle cell, a nerve cell, a cell that has already committed to being one thing, can revert to an unspecialized state and then become something else entirely. A skin cell becomes a nerve cell. A nerve cell becomes a muscle cell. The organism rebuilds itself from the inside. This is not regeneration in the way a lizard regrows a tail. A lizard grows new tissue from a dedicated pool of stem cells. What this jellyfish does is fundamentally different. It converts existing adult cells backward through developmental time. It is as if a fully grown oak tree could decide to become a seedling again, not by producing seeds, but by physically shrinking back into one. The mechanism that makes this possible starts with a kind of cellular amnesia. When the jellyfish begins to revert, its cells lose the molecular markers that told them what they were. Every cell in a complex body carries a kind of identity tag, a pattern of active and silenced genes that locks it into its role. What happens in Turritopsis dohrnii is that those locks release. The cells enter a state that resembles the very earliest stages of embryonic development. And here is the part that keeps researchers up at night. The cells do not just go quiet and wait. They actively reprogram. There are specific genes, some of them related to what we call pluripotency in stem cell research, that switch back on in this jellyfish in a way they simply do not in almost any other adult animal. If this is quietly reordering everything you thought you knew about aging, A-like helps more people discover what is actually happening here. The body then collapses inward. The bell, the dome-shaped body, folds and shrinks. The tentacles retract and are reabsorbed. What is left is a tiny, dense, undifferentiated mass called a cyst. From that cyst, a new polyp grows. A polyp is the very first stage of a jellyfish's life, a small, anchored, colonial form that eventually buds off new medusae, the swimming bell-shaped animals we recognize. So this creature does not just stop aging, it exits the adult phase of life entirely, passes back through a larval stage, and re-enters the developmental sequence from near the beginning. The reason this matters beyond the jellyfish itself is what it reveals about the nature of biological aging. For most animals, including us, aging is treated by the body as a one-way road. Cells accumulate damage, telomeres shorten. Gene expression patterns drift. The body does not have a reset mechanism because evolution, for most lineages, never needed to build one. A fish that lives long enough to reproduce has already done its evolutionary job. There is no selection pressure for immortality in most environments, but Turritopsis dohrnii lives in conditions that are genuinely unpredictable. The Mediterranean and the world's tropical oceans, where it is found, can shift dramatically. Temperature, salinity, food availability. A body that can reboot when conditions become lethal is a body that survives what other bodies cannot. The reversion is not random. It is triggered. Starvation is the most reliable trigger in lab conditions. Physical damage works. Extreme temperature shifts work. The jellyfish appears to read its own internal state and, when that state crosses a certain threshold of crisis, initiates the reversal. The body is not passively failing. It is making a decision, or something that functions like one, to abandon the current life stage and try again. What makes that decision possible is still not fully understood. There are researchers who believe the trigger involves a specific cascade of stress hormones and gene regulators. Others think it may be simpler, a threshold of cellular damage that crosses a point where the cost of maintaining the current form exceeds the cost of rebuilding from scratch. Either way, the jellyfish does not wait to die. It acts before death arrives. There is something quietly destabilizing about that. We tend to think of biological life as having a fixed shape. Birth, growth, reproduction, decline. That shape feels fundamental. But Turritopsis dohrnii is running a completely different operating system, one where the developmental stages are not a one-way sequence but a loop that can be re-entered. This system has been running in the ocean for longer than our species has existed. That is not a metaphor. The lineage that carries this mechanism predates us by an enormous margin. We arrived recently. This was already here. And here is the part that sits with me quietly in a way I cannot quite shake. Humans have known for centuries that the body has a kind of intelligence, that it heals, that it adapts, that it responds to conditions we are not consciously aware of. But we have also spent a very long time treating the body's aging as simply inevitable, a given, a wall. This jellyfish does not treat it that way. It treats crisis as information. It treats the end of one form as the beginning of another. We used to do something like that. At a cellular level, in our earliest development, before the locks set in, the capacity for radical cellular reprogramming exists in our biology too, in those first days after fertilization. Then it gets switched off and stays off. The jellyfish never fully switches it off. It keeps that door open, and when things get bad enough, it walks back through. There is no instruction in that for us, no lesson to apply, just the quiet recognition that something in the ocean has solved a problem we still consider unsolvable. And it solved it by holding on to a kind of biological flexibility that the rest of us lost somewhere along the way. The next time you see a jellyfish in the water, even a common one, even one that has nothing to do with this species, look at the bell, watch the slow pulse. That rhythm is ancient, and somewhere in the same ocean, a fingernail-sized animal is quietly folding itself back into the beginning, for reasons we are only beginning to understand. If this changes how you see what living things are actually capable of, share it. There are people who have never heard of this mechanism, and they should.